Okay, good morning, everybody. It's another beautiful day in the state of Texas. Been a couple weeks since I've actually did another video, and that was because I had to do some re-engineering on my controller for this. If you guys remember last time, I actually had like 4 different sensors that I was going to use to test temperature or test moisture. Well, that's kind of been scrapped, and so there's been a couple reasons behind it. Some of it related to corrosion, some of it related to the fact that it's just not significant for this kind of product. But I will be using 4 different sensors on my other garden box. If you guys remember last time, my plants were actually pretty much in their infancy, but now they're growing pretty fast. I mean, look at this dang lettuce. Wow, that is really moving fast. And this butter crunch, whew, boy, that's something else. Anyway, if you've noticed, I have my irrigation system that's started. This is basically going to be connecting to a water valve that will be, and water pump rather, that's going to be putting water in here at specific times depending on how they're invoked from the Docker containers. Over here, last time if you remember, I had a little bit different setup. This time I have my small edge component and a solid state relay in place. That solid state relay in place is what's going to basically control a lot of the other functions as well. One of it is to disable power. As I mentioned, corrosion was kind of a big factor with some of the things that I saw earlier, and so I had to make some corrections to try to get rid of that issue because the corrosion was coming because the power was consistent on the probes. So had to get rid of that. So now I'm going to had to refactor it, redo it a little bit, and so I'm going to do it a little bit different for this box, and then we're going to change it up again. Okay, I have the water pump installed. If you notice, the line that we were showing earlier that is snaking through the garden is now connected down here to this tiny little water pump. This is a very small water pump. It's like 5 volts, so it's not a huge amount of electricity, but it is good enough to drive a little bit of water into the garden as is needed. And then as this line snakes through the garden, it'll basically just kind of water everything and keep the base nice and moist. The interval that I'm having it set to is going to be very minimal, so but I will be checking it throughout the day. But anyway, this is just for now. I'm going to now invoke this motor to start, and then we'll go from there. With the invoking of the container, so here's my source code that we're going to be using, and it's kind of the same what we did earlier. Just to kind of reiterate, back when I was originally doing this, I was actually having multiple temperature sensors and multiple irrigation controls, but right now we're just going to do it individually. So basically the garden API image in this case is going to be doing all of the work, but we're going to stretch that later on my other configuration to do the multiple irrigation controls. In this particular sense, we're basically just launching everything from a config file to show what values we're getting. We're going to get the last watered. We're going to get a water interval. We're going to get the a GPIO to know where to trigger sensoring power or power for sensors. The temperature, moisture sensor, and water duration. These variables are used later on in the process, but one of the most important right now is the sensor power enabled GPIO, and that is because my moisture sensors were actually rusting because they had constant power being applied to them. So every time when my script kicks off this time, in addition to all the other variables that I'm checking, I'm making sure I'm actually enabling the power so I can check the moisture sensor, and then after that I'm shutting it off because I don't want my sensors to rust. Anyway, pretty self-explanatory. We're just checking the day since last watered, the water interval, meaning how many days to do it. We're going to check the temperature. We're checking to see if it's above 32 degrees. And we're also checking to see if it's dry. And then we're running through our sequences. Alright, so let me switch back over to my items here, and I'm going to run the command. And so this is now going to start our process for running the water cycle, which it is currently active and being used. So let me quickly make sure that I have any dangling containers removed. 1 second when we do that. Okay, yes, we want to get rid of it. Okay, there's nothing running. Let's just do a quick check to make sure. Okay, so nothing is running. So now we're going to drop my command in there to start running the garden container, which will run a Node.js application, and it will also have an embedded Python application running as well. Okay, so now we're running on the IPs 172.17.02, which is an internal Docker container IP, and then I'm routing my request to 8080, and then giving it a name, Moline Garden Container with privileges, and then giving it the name of the container as well, Moline Garden Container 1.0. Once this gets active and running, I will switch back over, and then we can check the logs real quick. Okay. All right. So now that is running. So let me get the container ID. 1 second when it loads. Okay. Copy this. Docker logs. This will tell me that the Node.js server is actually running, and it looks like it did start. Let's check it again because it's probably running a little behind. Okay, 1 second, it will show you that the server is actually started. Okay, so now it's saying that the Moline Garden app is running and the cron job has started. Now the cron job is set to run every 2 hours. So every 2 hours it's going to check to see if the schedule has been operating, and the days interval, and it's also going to check to see if the sensor is showing dry. If it does, then it's going to basically water. If not, then it's just going to continue for another 2 hours later on and check again. Anyway, that's it for now, and please wait for the next video as we start looking now into object modeling and watching how our plants grow through capturing pictures in a camera.